all the researchers, they have given different perspective. Uh, some have highlighted the failures and some have highlighted the successes. And one of the perception that has come out from your study, from your research, is actually the failures that United Nations, despite of all its work in the different fields, have not been successful in resolving the conflict. And I think that I should give some of my ideas because I have studies one dimension of the United Nations, and which is in fact one of the most pertinent areas of when you talk about United Nations, you have to consider that why there are certain flaws that have been used or rather abused by the big power. So I'll just be focusing on Article 51 of the UN Charter because that is actually the failure, and I will come back again to the point which I have just said, that the major perception is that the United Nations is unable to resolve the conflict. It's the interpretation and different interpretations of the Article 51 that is facilitating the big powers. A vacuum is created and that has been used, rather abused by the big powers. Basic objective of United Nations is to maintain peace and order. This has been highlighted by the Charter. To develop cooperation among the state, more coordination in the development activities, social, political, cultural, and along with that, it also aims to provide human rights. So these are the four areas which are highlighted as the objective of the United Nations. There is the first article which is important is the Article 2.4 of the Charter. It says that all members to refrain in the international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state in any other manner inconsistent with the purpose of the UN, because UN's purpose is the maintenance of peace and resolution of the conflict. So no member can use threat or the threat of use of force, actual force or the threat of use of force. Article 51 is important because these two articles are interconnected to each other. Article 51's first part, it says that nothing in the present charter shall impair the inherent right of individual or collective self-defense. If an armed attack occurs against a member of the United Nations, until the Security Council has taken the measure necessary to maintain international peace and security. This is only the first part. There are different interpretations. Largely, there are three interpretations which are very popular in the world of this right of the use of force or this right of the self-defense. One group of the states says that the right of the self-defense can only be used when actual attack has happened. The second group of the state, which is largely dominated, the US is the main state, it says that the use of force or the right of self-defense can be used when the attack is imminent. It's foreseen that the other party is going to attack you. So you can attack before you are actually attacked. It's called as the preemptive strike, preemption. And the third group of the states, which are where China is there, Austria, Australia, and many other states, they believe that which is called as the unable and unwilling doctrine. Unable means that the state is unable to control any insurgency or any activity across the border, in their border, or they are unwilling to control. So there are three groups. Now, why I am mentioning this? Because the second group of the states that is dominated by the US, Israel, and other states, they are actually using this Article 51 in the preemptive manner. They are attacking before they have been attacked. And in fact, there are so many questions that may be raised on this Article 51. The first is that the Article 51 has not defined that what is the attack. I mean, how that is defined. Cyber attack, is it really the cyber attack? is the capturing of the any ship, aircraft, or crossing the border, whatever. I mean, it has not defined, it's very vague, that it has not defined that what type of attack will be considered as an attack on the state. Second is that uh, it also talk about the collective self-defense. First of all, self-defense can never be collective. It would be personal, I mean individual. How could the United Nations Charter use the word collective self-defense when there is no such concept of the collectiveness? Now, if there is a collective self-defense, so what the member should do if an attack has happened? Should they immediately contact the Security Council and ask them to provide collective measures for them to protect, or whatever? This is, in fact, a very, very strong vagueness. Then, what if the Security Council will not be able to do anything? Because the further explanation of the article says that Security Council will decide whatever the measure they think would be sufficient, deemed necessary to give protection to the state. But if the Security Council would not be able to reach to consensus, so in this modern, with modern weaponaries and military technology, few hours are very sensitive, I mean very important, because within few hours any state may be taken over by the attackers. So these are actually some of the flaws. Then there may be some, it also said that, I mean the further part of the article says that measure taken by the members in the exercise of this right of self-defense shall be immediately reported to the Security Council and shall not in any way affect the authority and responsibility of the Security Council under the present charter to take such action as it deems necessary in order to maintain and restore international peace and security. Now, that it says that the member who feel that he will be attacked, they have to immediately report to the Security Council. Then Security Council will convene a meeting, they will discuss what measure they deem necessary to provide protection or respond to the member that have been attacked. There is no format or structure available that how and what would be in the report which the member is required to send to the Security Council. I have some examples. For example, I said that I'll come back to the point that many states are actually using the preemptive strike because there is a wide gap in the interpretation that what is actually written and what it can be interpreted. On 9th September, Israel's 9th September strike on Hamas leadership in Qatar have been communicated to the Security Council by using the word that they have acted in self-defense because what Hamas had did earlier on 7th October, this is the reply. So it was the Israeli self-defense that have been used against the Hamas leadership on 9th September. Then U.S. attack on Iran on nuclear facilities on 22nd June is another example, and that was replied by United States to the Security Council that it was necessary and proportionate. Proportionate means that it was proportionate to the earlier Iranian activity because they believe that if they will not destroy the Iranian nuclear structure, then ultimately it will be the Israelis or the Americans would be targeted. Israeli attack on the Iran's nuclear facility on Iran on 13 June is yet another example, and that had again been reported to the Security Council, mentioning the right of the self-defense. Then there are some other examples like between 2014 to 2016, a number of the member states, they have attacked on Syria, and it was on the invitation or whatever the request of Iraq, and all the states that have used the force in Syria, they have mentioned or they have interpreted the defense right of the self-defense, the same Article 51 in a different manner. Then Russia also sent a letter to the United Nations Secretary General mentioning that they have also used the right of the self defense against Ukraine. Then there is another good example that India, on its part, had never reported to the Security Council of its Operation Sindoor. Although number of the Indian official statements have mentioned this right of the self-defense and also the operation against the forces in the Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed in Pakistan, but it was not never reported to the Security Council. Then finally, the recent Pakistan's attack on Afghanistan have not also been mentioned to the security, not reported to the Security Council, although Pakistani Foreign Office and the ISPR have mentioned indirectly or directly that they have actually used the right of the self-defense, and again in the preemption manner. So we can see that in the three type of the interpretation have been used widely. And in one of the statement conference that have been convened by Mexico, they said that in the last 6 or 7 years, this right of self-defense have been used 78 times. It had been used 78 times with different interpretations. I think that when we are talking about the United Nations and its failure, UN's major objective was to maintain peace, resolve the conflict. But if there are different interpretations of the UN Charter itself, the states are using this flaw, this loophole in the structure, loophole in the charter have been widely abused by the states, and it may be corrected. I mean, by taking some advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice specifically on the Article 51, but it requires to be amended. Otherwise, it would continue to affect the United Nations system that have been created in the world. Future of the United Nations would continue to be very dark. Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you, Professor Saiba. So I'll now invite questions if anybody wants to raise any issues. Arshad Saab ko do.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum. Okay, my name is Arshad Rahim, and I've been newly co-opted member of the council of this prestigious organization, for which I'm very privileged and proud to be part of. First of all, I, great admiration for Lady for her expose and excellent, work that we have seen from our researchers. Particularly, the last gentleman talked about what are possible solutions. And my two comments are, in the context of unresolved matters before the United Nations, have we forgotten about Kashmir? Because it doesn't seem to figure anywhere. And I mentioned this to our khatib in the mosque, that we stopped praying also for them. So, that's my one point, because this was a very early conflict, and which was quite comprehensively addressed in the United Nations work that they did, but it failed to be implemented. So that's one. Secondly, going forward, very interesting that, 45 years ago, 80 years ago, one could imagine, but one didn't know the strength of technology, that how it would evolve and what it can do for us. And today we can. In fact, we can imagine it so much that we know that we don't know. So how can technology help us in blocking these preemptive measures? And also, how can technology help us also in this? The other point is your last point, Madam, that we need to remove the inequalities or the flaws in the charter. They will all be subjected to the vetoes that we are trying to, So how will we?
Right.
How will this? Thank you very much.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, sir. Because technology can help in addressing some of the issues, but I think that United Nations failure is more um, on the interpretation of the charter first, uses and abuses of the power. It's the power politics which is affecting, and I think that it has inherited the same old structure, the old world state system. Before the Second World War, it was the same. The big powers, center, Europe, they continue to control the power. Still now, the Security Council cannot be amended, and whenever there are proposals for the amendment, I think that it cannot function without the approval of the permanent members. So this is a deadlock situation. It requires to have a new organization. Otherwise, this cannot be. I am very not very pessimistic, but I don't have any impression on that. Yes, sir. Please, Javed. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this such a good session. A lot of my knowledge has been refreshed, and I've learned new things also. I must commend all four of you researchers to have encompassed all aspects. I am retired from Pakistan Air Force. Marshal Abid Rao is my name, and I am a student of history. You see, I would have liked to hear how many vetoes by America have actually helped fuel the fire. They wouldn't let Ukraine war come to an end. They wouldn't let Gaza to come to an end. And if you look at local Pakistan-India conflicts also, it is America who has asked us for a ceasefire, not UN. So role of UN probably can be divided into the military conflicts in which it has failed miserably, just because America is one country which wants to sell its weapons in the Middle East in billions of dollars per year and ask Israel to go to war with them. So it's an industry for America. So America would never like to have peace. As far as Kashmir is concerned, sir, you just asked a question. We have never analyzed why this was not implemented. 1948, this resolution, in Kashmir. And since 1953, when UN gave up its efforts to implement, they had a group called UN MOGIP, Military Observer Group in India and Pakistan. And then I think in 2014, Indians just asked them to get lost. And there are clear violations. Because the spirit of UN is like human spirit. The powerful wants to exercise, the might is right, there is this jungle law. Why was Second World War started? Because Treaty of Versailles was so harsh on Germany that in reaction they attacked the whole world. And why did they do it in First World War? Again, it's a debatable issue. So UN may have very good services in social sector, in health, in education, and poorer countries are real good beneficiaries of that, including ours. But should I suggest that, when it comes to a conflict, they should exercise their own muscles and decide? Kashmir today, if I ask even a government official from Foreign Office, he doesn't have a roadmap. What kind of solution are we looking for Kashmir? Our common man doesn't have. I've been following some of the Indian researches on Kashmir. It is harsh, but let me say that this is PIIA, that Kashmir is not an issue of Sindh, not an issue of Balochistan, not of Pathans. It is an issue of Punjab. This is again an Indian think tank group. And within it is Pakistan, in Punjab, it is a problem of northern Punjab, which contributes maximum armed forces to people to the armed forces. How correct is that? Maybe you can research on that. We had this conflict in May with India. God was very kind. We settled everything in just 3 days. But I've been asking a lot of our seniors in the Foreign Office, in the political sectors, as to why don't we raise the issue of Kashmir now, when we have proven to the world that this is a flashpoint and it can turn to a very horrible war. Any side making a mistake of firing a nuclear weapon will be good enough to finish the whole region. So, second point that I picked up from the presentation, Africa doesn't have a representation in the permanent seats. There are over 1 billion people. Does it require regrouping, creation of new blocks? Middle East is strong enough, powerful enough, rich enough to have in its own group, but no. America is keeping them engaged, Arab versus Iran, Arabs versus Israel, funding both of them. So is the real culprit, bad child, America? Maybe you can say out of 78 vetoes that have been used, 50 were by America, and in negative sense, the war continues. If Gaza, the resolution had been carried, maybe the war had finished 2 months earlier. So the question is, it is America alone failing the UN, or the political body or construction, the structure of UN is such that one country can make it fail its manifesto, its agenda, its desire to avoid conflicts. So far, it hasn't. So maybe UN can be divided into other bodies that only medical, food, and disaster management will be helped. For conflict, rely on your own. Use your own muscle and use your own power. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, I agree with you, sir, because I think that the United it's a single one unipolar world, and America is trying to sustain its position and power, and that can be easily with the help of the United Nations system, because they have the veto power. Not only U.S. but its allies are also there, and I think that United Nations role would gradually be declining more, because we can see it in the present Gaza war that how many times, if we do a research, there may be 100 times more than 100 times the UN Secretary General has condemned the war in Gaza and Israeli atrocities, but nothing has happened because there is a deadlock always in the Security Council. So UN functioning is being blocked by the power center, that is US. So what I've said that quite possible that within say 20, 50 years, it would be completely dysfunctional, just like OIC. I mean, they're sitting, discussing, and then doing nothing. So development is not enough, because main objective of United Nations was conflict resolution, where it is completely failed. The system is not working. Maybe.
May I? Thank you. Compliments on organizing this initiative. Very interesting presentations and comments. I thought that the basic issue needs that word to be mentioned, which is asymmetry. The asymmetries of power historically and currently determine the structure. The fault is not in the United Nations, the fault is in the concept and the reality of asymmetry. Kashmir became not possible to resolve because the asymmetry of power in South Asia, and particularly after 1971. And what we need to refer to is the fact that there are two groups of nations currently attempting reform of the Security Council. One group wants to expand it, retaining the veto power. The other group, fortunately, in which Pakistan is playing a very important role, is one that does not want an addition to the permanent members of the Security Council and wants to remove this discrimination. And Italy is one of its important partners. So there is an attempt to reform this problem of asymmetry that needs to be addressed, and we should not discount the influence of China in the years to come. China already has more naval ships than the United States. It has only one base possibly outside China, which is Djibouti. It's not a military base. Whereas the United States has 800 military bases around the world. That kind of asymmetry will take years to overcome. Lastly, Madam Chair, I just want to refer to the fact that I wish Pakistan's role in the UN needs a little more attention. I'll give you 3 examples. One, Pakistan produced the first woman in the world to head a United Nations agency. Dr. Nafis Sadiq in the 1980s was appointed head of the United Nations Fund for Population Activities. A remarkable example, number one. Number two, the whole shift which was referred to from state security to human security was catalyzed by a Pakistani called Dr. Mehbubul Haq, who really developed the concept of the Human Development Index, which has now become a worldwide measure. He deserved the Nobel Prize. Amartya Sen of India got it much later, but it was Dr. Mehbubul Haq. And third, and not because one was personally associated with it, but in 1989-90, serving as the personal representative of Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto, we put together the world's first ever summit for children. No heads of state and government had ever met before in world history to discuss children. They would discuss conflicts, economy, defense, but never children. And Pakistan had the honor of Benazir Bhutto being elected co-chairperson of a world summit along with the Canadian Prime Minister. Alas, our government was dismissed before the summit, but Pakistan played a stellar role in mobilizing 72 heads of state and government in September 1990. And the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child became the first, fastest ever convention to be ratified by a vast majority of states. So Pakistan has played, apart from the UN peacekeeping role, a major constructive role and continues to attempt to reform the UN Security Council. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such enlightening comments. I personally have a comment to make, and then I have a question from our esteemed professor. Sorry. So, pertaining to your question about how data could be integrated, already UN is underway creating a data common center, and through the integration of electronic warfare, electromagnetic warfare, and integration of radar technology, a system could be built where any country who would be moving towards preemptive war or using any major armament or weaponry, they could be signaled. But then again, the question is कि इस तरीके का एक system बनाने के लिए, integrated system बनाने के लिए, countries would have to permit the integration of their defense system. But then again, the question comes to their sovereignty and their privacy. So would that be possible? So as I again mentioned in my address as well, that UN ki success is largely dependent on the willingness of nation states. So again, that is a thing. But then coming to our professor, you have really illuminated the flaws in the charter. But then what my question raises in the terms of that there are many things in the world that they're inherently flawed, or they come with some flaws, but then they're approved and they are being used. So we can say that UN Charter came with some flaws and it needs to be improved, but can we say that it has systematically failed because of some of the clauses that it is not being met? Also, you mentioned in your address that the goals of the UN Charter was not only peace, but also establishing order and human rights. So when it comes to establishing order and human rights, again, the interpretation could vary, but we have seen that UN has, and the agencies of United Nations have performed remarkably to establish order in terms of gender equality, education, development forces, and other areas. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, related to the data sharing, I think that you're right that the states are sovereign. There are certain areas where data sharing could be possible, but I think that movement of troops across the border and any such activity can be easily monitored by the satellites, and that is the different satellites are, and they are actually messaging and giving information what happened in just recent in May between Pakistan and India. So the all the movements of the troops and any kind of military movement can be easily supervised through the space satellites. Related to the question which you have asked, I think that when there were many expectations from the UN, because the United Nations was created immediately after the Second World War. So, and the background of failure of the League of Nations was already there. So the states, they wanted to create a system which is flawless, means there would not be any, it would not encourage conflict, rather it would control the conflict. But what ultimately happened, that United Nations system has completely collapsed because of these flaws. Yes, there are always some flaws in any system. Nothing can be created flawless, but the expectations from the UN were very high, and attempts have not been made to address those flaws. Rather, and it's because of the state interest. I think that big powers, they have their interest, and they are using these loopholes in the charter for their policies, political policies. So there is an unwillingness from the big powers, and obviously the Security Council, the veto system, it also requires to be restructured. As Dr. Javed Jabbar Sahab have mentioned, that there is China, power of China is there, Germany, and India is also trying to take a position in the Security Council. Why not from Africa? So, and again, if such proposal be circulated or be given, I think that it would again be blocked by the big powers, because they don't want to have any further changes. There's no sharing in their power, no sharing in the power. So sometimes I feel that United Nations would be like SARC. जो development, it will work only on development, human rights, etc., but no conflict resolution, no political matters, क्योंकि UN has not been able to address. देखिए, देखा जाए तो बॉस्निया की war से from that time United Nations failures are constantly been adding. कोई उसने UN ने कोई conflict resolve नहीं की. Sir, please.
No, but Shaista, can I ask a question? Can we really say? I mean, I know that we've in this discussion we are having today. Apart from Maliha's presentation, the UN has got a bashing. But the point is that can we say that the UN has not, provided any succor, has not been able to bridge the gap between two conflicting countries? It has not brought peace in any way. Can we say that?
Madam, okay, yes, sir, please, please.
I'm only saying these are very small examples in terms of numbers, Madam Chair. But for example, in East Timor,
Yes,
East Timor, they intervened and they ensured the independence of East Timor from a country hugely larger than East Timor, Indonesia. Very difficult for a country to give up territory. And they persuaded Indonesia to agree to a referendum, a plebiscite. Second, Namibia in South Africa, with South Africa's preponderant military power, the UN intervened and ensured that Namibia was liberated from control by South Africa. These are two. But there are other examples, if we think a little harder. There are other examples where the UN has intervened successfully, but they are very small in number, not involving large numbers of people.
Means failures are more than the successes. I mean, if we collected the data, then we can say that 10 out of, 2 out of 20. This is the ratio actually, and it has been judged on the basis of the successes कि भाई अगर आप बनाई जिस लिए है और वो काम नहीं कर पाए तो फिर तो इसका मतलब है कि फेलियर ही है.
It might be interesting to know why they succeed when they succeed. Like these two
East
cases, for
Timor.
example. It might be interesting to know why they and why they fail when they fail. Pardon my Actually, now
Yes, but it's very American interest, yes, Western interest in East Timor and in Namibia. तो उन्होंने ब्लॉक नहीं की रेजोल्यूशन पास करने से. यहाँ पे देखिए अगर इफ़ यू लुक एट द सिचुएशन इन गाजा ही तो सबसे बड़ा फेलियर नज़र आ रहा है. इट्स बिकॉज मोस्ट ऑफ द रेजोल्यूशंस आर ब्लॉक वीटोड. वो पास ही नहीं होने देते. अगर इफ़ द रेजोल्यूशन इज पास देन यूनाइटेड नेशन में कम इन एक्शन, तो वो एक्शन में आने ही नहीं देते. नाउ आप ये देखिए कि दैट हाउ intelligently Americans are playing the cards. Now सारा ख़त्म हो गया. अब now they are making the government. I mean all the things, the objectives they have achieved. Now this the time to settle the issue. बिल्कुल यही they have done in Iraq. सब ख़त्म कर दिया and then they legitimate the government later on. तो कर
wants to replace the United Nations.
सर कुछ जगहों पे तो यही कहा जाता है, इट्स द यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, यूएस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. जी सर.
Madam, I want to make a Yes, madam, I want to make a small note. As we know that the functions of the United Nations are running with the contributions of the member states, 193 member states, and all they paid to the UN as per their capacity. So I think it is not an independent body and they can't run as per their desire, the institution, because the monetary factor is very important. The big countries, big donors running the institute, simply.
Sir, you are very right. And that the US is the main funder of the, it's a funding state. And मुझे अभी एक चीज़ का like just clicked to my mind that why United States stopped the visa of some of the Palestinians. क्योंकि if that is an international organization, then everybody should be allowed to. तो US तो उस जगह पे भी they control over the visa. नहीं दिया पैलेस्टीनियंस को, यासर अरफात को भी वीज़ा नहीं दिया था उन्होंने. सो दिस इज़ हाउ दे आर एक्चुअली कंट्रोलिंग द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. सर द फेल.
I want to ask Madam, lot of things has happened in Gaza and other countries. So in future, what you are expecting from Security Council and United Nations roles in the future world? We are hopeless now. The top leadership of the United Nations because of the political diplomatic failures. Especially, I'm talking about Security Council has played a very hopeless role in the Gaza. And so in future, what you are looking United Nations role if this is going to be happen everywhere in the world?
I think मैं तो जो what I said earlier कि it will gradually reduce the importance and जिसे कहते हैं dysfunctional होती चली जाएगी gradually. लेकिन अब जैसे there are some states, for example China is very much willing to activate the United Nations क्योंकि उसकी China is emerging as the मतलब bipolar world की तरफ जा रही है. तो हो सकता है कि दैट इन द लेटर फेजेस यानी 20 साल 50 साल बाद द चाइनीज़ इन्वॉल्वमेंट वुड फर्दर इंक्रीज. सो इट कैन, आई थिंक द फंक्शनिंग इज़ वेरी मच डिपेंडेंट ऑन द polarity of the world system. Since it's a unipolar world, so US continue to dominate control over the organization as well in all aspects. हाँ वो तो
You made a great point about the economics of a UN, and I wanted to say the same thing. That other than the veto, the bigger problem is the economics. And well, no one can deny the bias of UN when it comes to US, but it's basic economics. It funds 22% of the UN funding comes from US alone, and 25% of it comes, 25% of the UN's peacekeeping forces funding comes from the US. So yeah, that's one point that I wanted to make. Thank you.
Right. Oh, sure.
Do you think India has a strong case for a permanent seat on the Security Council based on their population figures? India, do you think India has a strong case?
Yes, India is
Because
a.
they have been saying this. I mean, it is their objection that we are the most populated country in the world, and we haven't got any seat on the permanent seat on the Security Council. Do they have a case?
um, on the basis of size, on the basis of population, I think it's a weak case. But uh, talking in a more academic manner, मेरे ख्याल है. लेकिन talking in as a Pakistani,
Ma'am,
no.
in what manner?
No, India should not be. Yes, this is in fact the most important. नहीं तो सर बात ये है कि क्यों आखिर मेंबरशिप पॉपुलेशन ज़्यादा है militarily ज़्यादा है मतलब what is the criteria for any member any new member?
They are the most populated country in the world.
इससे क्या फर्क पड़ता है?
No, somebody was talking about structural inequalities of the UN. No, so when you talk about structural inequalities, then you have to consider their case. I mean, I hate to say this. I'm a patriotic Pakistani. I agree with you, but you see.
Last question. Thank you. I want to leave some work for our researchers actually, and that is if United Nations organization were to be formed today, how would we structure it? How would we empower it? How would we fund it? And then find ways of moving towards it over the next, let's say, 20 years or 10 years or whatever time it takes. And reduce these asymmetries and the power balance and all these kind of things. One structure, one thing that comes to my mind is decentralization. So that if the United Nations organization could have not only contribution in monetary terms, but in all organizational and operational terms divided in some way amongst the various member countries, or at least by some criteria member countries, this could be one way of reforming the organization and improving its effectiveness, if not increasing its effectiveness. My comment and something for the researchers to answer. I'm not looking for an answer. Thank you.
Since you are not looking for an answer, we are not going to give you one. And I'm going to now wind up this very, very interesting session. I've learned a lot from my researchers also. I think they were brilliant. And of course, Dr. Saiba over here, she has always been brilliant. And thank you so much, Shaista, for presiding, really. You presided over this interactive session. I would just like to say that I mean, the UN has come for a bashing here, but I think the UN has done a lot of other work. You are right, not to prevent conflict, but in other directions. It has done work which has benefited the people of the world. And we should recognize that. The other thing I would like to say is that I believe that there will be a change with the growing importance of China. And very soon, it is predicted that China will become the most important economic power in the world. It will overtake the United States. They say by 2027 or something, it will overtake the United States. And I think that with China's various followers, because China has a lot of followers also, that should make a difference. And here I would like to pay a compliment to the diplomats of Pakistan. I would like to, don't heckle me. I would like to pay a compliment to the diplomats of Pakistan. Pakistan has had some brilliant diplomats, and they have played a very effective role within the United Nations system. They have been very effective, and their contribution has been acknowledged by everybody. People have turned to them to move resolutions, to stand up for issues, to stand up for poor countries, to stand up for developing countries. Pakistan has always done that. It has played a very important role with respect to the functioning of the United Nations, so we should acknowledge that. And in the end, I want to thank all of you for making this such an interesting session, especially Dr. Saiba over here. And tea is waiting for you on the ground floor. Thank you very much. बहुत अच्छे बहुत अच्छे आज के दौर में मुनीर अकरम ज़मीर अकरम